Welcome to our 2020 virtual Remembrance Day service. Please remove your hats for the ceremony. As we gather here today, we acknowledge we are on Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis. We pay our respects to the First Nations and Métis ancestors of this place and reaffirm our relationship with one another. Please rise as the colors advance. Please stay standing for the playing of our national anthem, O Canada.
We ask that you remain standing as Constable Duche and along with our SLC President, McKenna Spears, light our candle of remembrance. May its flame burn as an everlasting remembrance of those who served this great nation, providing us with the freedoms we take for granted. Please sit down.
Today we pause to remember and lament the horrors of war. We remember Canadian soldiers who died in wars past, the First World War, Second World War, Korean War, and Afghanistan War. We remember the young men and also women who never returned home. We remember their families, their friends, and their communities. We grieve with them. We remember those who were disabled or traumatized. We acknowledge their pain. We also remember all people who suffered the devastation of past wars, both soldiers and civilians, those who were wounded and disabled, those who loved ones were killed, those who were separated from family members, those who had to flee their homes, those who witnessed unimaginable horrors. We remember the suffering of allies and enemies alike. Therefore, we are here to remember, show our respect and reverence for those who have served both past and present. We would like to welcome our special guests, the Royal Canadian Legion members who provide services to veterans and our community. Welcome to our friends and families of the Maidstone community. Welcome to our Canadian service members and RCMP members. We are pleased you could all make it to our ceremony. Please lower your heads for a prayer of remembrance.
Today we remember with thanksgiving those who made the supreme sacrifice for us in the time of war. We pray that the offering of their lives may not have been in vain. Today we dedicate ourselves to the cause of justice, freedom, and peace, and for the wisdom and strength to build a better world. Thank you.
When we think of war, our thoughts go to the young men and women who went off to fight. Sadly, many of them did not return home to their families. As Mr. Noble reads out the honor roll, members of MHS school community will place a poppy on the cenotaph for each member in their honor. In military tradition, the last post is the bugle call that signifies the end of the day's activities. The last post was played to signal to the soldiers who were still out, wounded, or separated during the fight that the day was over. It also acted as a guide towards safety and rest. Today we play the last post to salute those who have never made it home. Following the honor roll and the playing of the last post, we will have our 2 minutes of silence as when the First World War finally ended on November 11th, 1918. People everywhere celebrated the return of peace. The rouse will play, and then Mr. Noble will recite the acts of remembrance. Feel free to join in on the last line. We will remember them.
Please stand as we pause and bow our heads. We remember those brave men and women who volunteered for the cause of freedom and peace. Please remain standing until asked to sit.
The Maidstone Legion member, Mr. Dennis Noble, will now read our local honor roll.
Legion members and veterans, come to attention. Let us remember in our prayers and during the silence those who in two great wars, Korean and peacetime operations, laid down their lives for their country. Their sacrifice shall never inspire us to labor on as to the end. That those who survive and need our aid may be assured of assistance in the country in which we live and for which they died, may ever be worthy of the sacrifice they made, and to remembrance them may we ever pray. Lord God of hosts, be with us yet, lest we forget, lest we forget. J. W. Gray, W. Stewart, H. H. Moore, John Sawtell, C. Smith, C. F. Trotchy, G. Addison, W. Campbell, Vic Ainsley, J. McClellan, Gordon Pickle, Jack McLaren, Lewis McLaren, Reuben C. Hoff, A. H. Nicholson, Douglas Jeffrey, John Wells, Arthur Richardson, Reginald Colbridge, Charles Newkirk, Hugh V. Thompson, Robert J. Bryans, Maynard Kennedy, H. Ward, C. M. Wirt, Barth Solomos, George Body, Dwayne Hanson, Alphonse Valerie. They shall not grow old, as we are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. We will remember them. Now we'll have the laying of the wreaths. Deposit colors.
Please sit. The laying of the wreaths is an integral part of many Remembrance Day services and highlights the functional and commemorative roles of war memorials. The laying of the wreaths also allows individuals and organizations to pay their respects and lay in tribute to individuals or groups. The gift of poppy wreaths, our memorial site, is a ritual that occurs around the world. Understood in every culture, the floral tributes signify both the beauty and briefness of life and invokes memories of other days.
The Royal Canadian Legion. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The School Community Council. Maidstone High School. Ratushniak Elementary School.
Thank you to those wreath layers. I would now like to call upon the students of Ratushniak Elementary School to share the famous poem, In Flanders Fields. The poem was written by John McCrae in 1915.
In Under fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky, the larks still bravely sing and fly, scarce heard amid the guns below.
We are the dead from days ago. We lived, felt dawn, saw sunset.
Loved and were loved, and now we lie in furnace fields.
Take up our quarrel with the foe to view, from failing hands we throw.
The torch be yours to hold it high, if ye break faith with us who die.
We shall not sleep, though poppies grow in founders' fields.
A poppy is to remember those far from home, crossing troubled lands and threatening waters and dangerous skies.
It is for the wounded and those who care for them.
In war, there are no unwounded soldiers. The poppy is for those who have died and for those who have survived with memories.
A poppy is for peace. Every year on Remembrance Day, it blooms across our land.
A poppy is to remember.
So each time you see rows and rows of white crosses, think of the families who suffered those losses. Today, those families still work hard for the ones they have lost. They continue to remind us of what freedom really costs.
So, on Remembrance Day and all other days, salute a war veteran and be sure to say,
"Thank you for all you did in the past. Let's hope today's soldiers will find peace at last."
We would now welcome Miss Kirby to share her understanding of commemoration in 2020.
Thank you. During these exceptional months, we've all had to give up some of our freedom. Canada hasn't experienced anything like this since the Second World War. Now, more than ever, we need to understand the price of freedom. In 2020, no veteran of the First World War is alive, and the average World War II veteran is 94 years old. The memories of their sacrifices must continue, and the values they fought for will live on in all of us. Last year, I had the privilege to attend the National Remembrance Day ceremony in Ottawa. It was a cold, damp day in Ottawa. I arrived at the National War Memorial at 7 a.m. as I wanted to see the cenotaph from the front row. The ceremony did not begin until 10:45. However, the area contained thousands of people by 9 a.m. The 2-hour wait was filled with much sober second thought about fallen family members and friends. I spoke with a lady who had just lost her mother, a World War II veteran. She had never actually experienced the ceremony from outside of the parade, as she would always accompany her mother on the scene. I could hear in her voice she missed her mom and had nothing but respect for the day. As I stood there and watched the parade, the hundreds of students, the bands, the current military members, and the veterans, I was in awe. The wind was picking up, and I was getting cold. A girl 3 rows back from me actually passed out due to the cold temperatures. I dressed for the occasion, wearing 2 layers of pants, snow pants, winter boots, a winter jacket, and not one but 2 scarves, and not one but 2 toques. Yet those veterans on parade were wearing their uniform with pride. No scarves, no toques, just their pride. My feet were getting cold, as were my hands, despite having my Canada mitts. As I watched the veterans and waited for the government dignitaries to arrive in their armored cars, I saw a Legion member offering red blankets to the veterans as it was getting colder. This lovely lady was offered a blanket not once, but twice. She refused. I don't know her name. I've never seen her before, but she reminded me that people are tough, and as a country, we are tougher together. I thought back to World War I and visualized how cold and horrible the conditions were in the thousands of kilometers of trenches between the rain, rodents, insects, mud, human debris. Then to add the winter of 1916 to 17 was extremely harsh. Many soldiers suffered from frostbite and exposure, causing them to lose extremities. The trenches did little to provide shelter or warmth from the extreme low temperatures, especially at night, even when clothes and blankets were frozen solid. I cannot begin to imagine the cold nights those soldiers endured. No hot showers, no hot beverages to warm them up. Nothing but frozen socks, uniforms, and blankets. So the next time you find yourself complaining, remember those who endured extreme conditions for our freedoms today. I have not sacrificed anything for my freedom. It was given to me by those who came before me and sacrificed so much. So now it's my responsibility to never forget the service and the sacrifices of more than 1.5 million Canadians. They suffered so I could have the freedom to stand here and give this speech, have an education, job, and a life, and to live a free life. Therefore, I will forever be in their debt. I will remember the sacrifices of everyone because they lost so much and because they gave everything. I thank them. I will remember them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kirby, for your dedication to commemorating and inspiring us to remember and acknowledge our freedom did not come without a cost, and that on Remembrance Day, we are all one country wanting the same things.
We now call upon Maidstone High School Vice Principal Mr. Dawson to read a poem entitled A Mother's Cry, written by Ava Butts of Orleans, Ontario, St. Peter's Catholic High School. She was the winner of the 2019 Intermediate Legion Poetry Contest.
A mother's cry is something you never want to hear, for it draws people near. This mother's cry was out of fear, because her son enlisted in the war and may disappear. As they drive to the train station, the mother has something dear to say. "Oh, son, I love you so much. Now please don't go away." She hugs him tightly and tells him her love for him is profound. But she knows he must go to keep his country safe and sound. The letters he sends are too few and too far apart. She can tell war is tearing him apart. She longs to hug him in a blanket of love and remind him that God is watching over him from up above. Time passes, and a man in uniform stands at her door, holding a red and white flag in a triangular fold. His face is somber, his body stoic. The news he bears was that her son was heroic. "I'm sorry to tell you, your son was in the Battle of No Man's Land." She squeezes with pain her husband's hand. She knows death has come to her son so dear, and slowly fall the silent tears. She hopes that with his last breath, he knew he was loved, his soul at rest. The grief she feels is real and deep. This is the bitter price of war and fighting for peace. And though years later, she is honored with the Memorial Silver Cross, all she can think about is the son she lost. And all the other soldiers who have died, up in heaven, they can hear their mother's cries. For mothers whose sons have been lost, fighting for Canada at all cost, remember their sacrifices so we can be free. Remember so history doesn't repeat.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson.
We now call upon Olivia Perkins to read the 2019 senior poem written by Anne Smith from Heritage Christian School in Grary, New Brunswick.
Where Poppies Grow by Anna Smith. In Flanders field where poppies grow, I've seen that sight, and so I know the lives that stay and lives that go, who bravely fought against our foe. In Flanders fields the poppies sway, a sign of hope to all that pray. It is as if they want to say, because of them you're free today. In Flanders fields the poppies sing, to those who died and those that weep, it is as if they want to keep the dead alive within our dreams. In Flanders fields the poppies grow, to be a comfort to those who know, a sacrificed life now deep below, in Flanders fields where poppies grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia.
We would like to invite Constable Josh Best of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police to the podium to address us with his thoughts of remembrance.
Thank you for having me. Remembrance Day in my aspect, it's an honor to be able to be here and serve under the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. And if it wasn't for our ancestors being able to go to war and fight for me to get this privilege to be here, then I wouldn't be able to be here. So it's important that everyone gets out here every year and supports it, because it might not be a big deal to some people, but to other people it should be, because that's, we have to be thankful for a lot of reasons why. Remembrance isn't just remembering those who died, but who came home and continued the struggle at home, because there's a lot, and that's an order to be thankful for too. And it's just an honor and privilege to be able to come here every year and support these veterans that come and support it and continue to come and support it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Constable Best, for sharing your thoughts on remembrance with the community.
We would like to invite the Mayor of Maidstone, as well as the school's principal, Mr. Brennan Beacott, to the podium to address us with the highlights of remembrance.
Welcome. Thanks for attending, guests, students, community members, Royal Canadian Legion, RCMP. Thank you for joining us here today at this wonderful spot here to allow us to remember our soldiers. Welcome once again on today, November 11th, as a symbolic holiday to allow communities to pause and remember our loved ones for paying the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms and great country of Canada. Today, we pay tribute and respect to those who have and continue to fight for our great country. As we watch this from the comfort of our homes and a distance from our homes, because this year is a pandemic and we're not able to gather at the Royal Canadian Legion. We need to remember those who gave and give the ultimate sacrifice for us. We have been given the ability to fight our new war, COVID-19, from the comfort of our homes and communities. We thank you for that. With that, we thank you for the fight and sacrifices you have made for our freedoms. World War I and World War II impacted us all in some shape or form. It was fought by all, no matter our race, religion, or last name. As I stand here today, on behalf of the community and the school, we would like to thank you. This day, November 11th, 2020, will also go down in the history books for being a virtual Remembrance Day ceremony. Whoever thought? But as you watch today, we did not want today to be unrecognized, underappreciated, and forgotten. So as you go about your day today, we have not forgotten, and we do remember all the privileges and freedoms these great people have given us. Once again, from the town of Maidstone and the schools of Maidstone, thank you and have a great day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beacott, for explaining your views on Remembrance Day.
Each year, Veterans Affairs Canada commissions the design of a poster to commemorate Veterans Week. It is hoped that these posters will remind Canadians of the sacrifices and achievements made by Canada's veterans during the times of war and peace. Remembering and reflecting on the significance of the contribution they made and continue to make strengthens the commitment to preserve the values that they fought and died for: truth, justice, peace, freedom, and knowledge. We would now like to invite the MHS U of S student intern, Mr. Austin Redman, to explain the significance of 2020 to Veterans Affairs.
The people of the Netherlands have never forgotten the brave Canadians who fought to free their country during the Second World War. Our shared struggle has forged a close bond between our two nations. The 1st Canadian Army played a major role in the liberation of the Netherlands, a campaign which cost over 15,000 lives. Throughout the winter of 1944 and until May 1945, the Germans were fighting a campaign of retreat as the Allies advanced northward throughout the Netherlands. Finally, in the spring of 1945, Canadian forces accepted the surrender of the 25th German Army. Over 150,000 Canadian soldiers had achieved liberation for the Dutch. 2020 marks the 75th anniversary of the end of the Second World War, which involved all of Canada working together as a country. More than 1 million Canadians served in the military. 45,000 gave their lives, and another 55,000 were wounded. On the 15th of August 1945, the guns lay still and silent, marking an end to one of the greatest struggles in the history of humankind. Canada had grown significantly through its sacrifice, allowing it to take its place on the world stage as a proponent of peace and defender of equality.
Thank you, Mr. Redman, for your explanation of the liberation of the Netherlands and the end of World War II.
As this ceremony comes to a close, thank you for being part of today's ceremony and for honoring the Legion's wishes. We are honored that you were able to join us today for our service. We realize that your fight and sacrifice was not in vain. War does touch the lives of all ages and all races. Thank you to all the students, staff, guests, RCMP, and Legion for taking part in our Remembrance Day service. Special thanks to the volunteers and our film crew for making the 2020 virtual Remembrance Day ceremony a success. Please stand for the singing of God Save the Queen. Please remain standing as the color party leaves.
Color party, prepare to march off colors. Color party, march off the colors.
Have a lovely afternoon. Thank you for remembering.